This is Empty the Bench with Tom Albano.
Dana White and the UFC have this mentality of nobody is bigger than the UFC. If Conor ultimately never fights again, we can just create another Conor. I think that's a problematic mindset, though.
Nick Morgeson.
4 years, $198 million. Stop asking for a trade. Stop asking to have everything your way, like a 2-year-old who cries for his binky every time he doesn't get what he wants. Okay? Sit your ass down and play another year in Brooklyn.
And Nick Federa.
I mean, I'm sure he'd fit right in with the, California's subculture of crunchy granola anti-vax weirdos.
Empty the Bench starts now.
Coming soon to YouTube near you. Empty the Bench minus.
Well, today's sort of an Empty the Bench minus because we're minus Nick Federa. Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 149. I'm Tom Albano. That's Nick Morgeson. And joining us this week on Empty the Bench, you know him from Game On here on the network, Tuesdays at 3 in the afternoon, noon Pacific time. It's Johnny Montalbano.
Hello, guys. Nick, Tom, good to be with you. I got some big shoes I guess I got to fill for Mr. Federa. And the funny thing is, I'm wondering how far away Nick actually is from being where I am, because he's down here in South Carolina this week on vacation. So it is an honor to fill in for him. He's probably a few miles away listening to the show. So, hi, Nick, wherever you are.
Just be careful what you wish for. You have very big shoes to fill.
Yeah, if you hear some knocking on the door as we do the show here, maybe that might be him. You never know. Yeah, I got some tall shoes to fill, but it's good to be on with you guys.
Speaking of big, so we were going to start today, gentlemen. Well, we got a lot we're going to be talking about. A whole lot of baseball news. We got, of course, we'll even though we did a little special on it last week. By the way, go watch that, our little special when the Deshaun suspension, the settlement finally happened. We went live not long after. So go check that out. So we'll briefly reshare our thoughts. We'll talk about Marcell Ozuna with the Braves. We'll talk about the Yankees' woes as of late. We'll talk about this whole Dana White thing where he was on the Gronkcast and we found out possibly some information about Brady and that team that he referred to on the HBO. That you're sticking with that guy, the team that snubbed him. Brady, of course, coming back from vacation as well. But, gentlemen, for weeks and weeks, every time it seemed like we were not going to do a Deshaun story first, a development in the case would happen, forcing us to bring it to the very top of our shows. Today, that has changed because the last 24-ish, maybe more 30-ish hours now, a development happened in the NBA that has seen Watson drop down our show order because today we are going to be leading off with some, obviously it's not breaking anymore because it's a day old, but still recently developing news. All that drama with Kevin Durant and the Nets for nothing. He's going to stay.
Wait a minute. Deshaun's not first? Wait, really?
Really? Instead, your Brooklyn Nets take the top spot.
Great.
So on the morning of Tuesday, August 23rd, a statement came out from the Brooklyn Nets account around 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern time, and it was a statement from Sean Marks, the general manager of the team, saying that himself, head coach Steve Nash, KD, Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, and his wife, Clara Usai, they all had a little get-together to talk out their problems. And now Kevin Durant is recommitted to staying with Brooklyn. And the emphasis of we're going to win a championship in Brooklyn. The mission is still on.
Yeah, the mission is still on. They're going to win a championship. They're going to live happily ever after, and they're going to cruise into the sunset.
Kumbaya!
So, when I first heard this story on Tuesday, the first thing that came to my mind was the day before we heard that report come out from Shams about the Grizzlies being the latest team involved in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes. And then the Nets come out on Tuesday and put that to bed. And Nick, I keep thinking of you because I know you're our resident Nets fan, and I'm going to give you the floor here in a moment. But yeah, Tom, you said it at the start. All of this for nothing. For nothing, really, except drama, except for, confusion. The guy that I feel let's be fair here. And again, I don't say this as a Nets fan, but I'm going to say this here. The guy that I actually really feel the best for right now is Steve Nash, because I think he's the guy that was really getting, the unfair criticism in all of this, because, when Durant originally says you either have me or without Marks or Nash. And, I felt like he was taking the fall for all this. When, if you remember going into last season, Nash had to deal with Durant being injured, for Kyrie, who wasn't able to play a good chunk of games because of the vaccination situation. And then they go out and get Ben Simmons, and he doesn't even play a game. So how does all of that really fall on Steve Nash? That's what I want to know.
And Nick, because I know where Nick Borgeson's going to go with this.
Absolutely.
I'll add to Johnny's defenses with one big point that we emphasized a couple weeks ago. Who brought in Steve Nash? Even if you want to say he's not a legitimate coach, who brought in Steve Nash? Whose idea was that?
Kevin Durant.
Yes.
Actually, I'll go one step further. Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving both brought in Steve Nash. Now, this is not the first time we've seen a star player get mad at said coach. I can go all the way back to Dwight Howard and Stan Van Gundy with the Orlando Magic. I mean, do you remember how bad the Superman situation was really going off there? I'm Superman. I'm allowed to be what I want. You're fired.
Every freaking morning, having to tune into Sports Center, getting ready for school, it's something with Stan Van Gundy and Dwight Howard.
And you know what? And you know what? Dwight Howard was not really a good player. I hate to say this, but the reason he was an all-star was because basically he could block shots. He was like Ben Wallace, but Ben Wallace was better because Ben Wallace at least could come up in big situations and get a block when necessary. And both were similar players because they both stunk from the free throw line. So you could just play hack-a-shack from the free throw line when they were in the game. So this whole situation is, first of all, I don't think Kevin Durant is here on his own volition anymore. I still think he's being forced to be here because what he realized is, because he kept, and we've talked about this for the last couple of weeks and months, he wants to go to Phoenix. He wants to go to Boston. He wants to go to Philly. But here's the problem. He's not going to be on an all-star team because the Nets have to get the value back in return for the guy that they want.
And to do so, we've even been talking about all these potential trade situations. And you saw the number of teams that were involved in these sweepstakes. You were looking at a crazy 3 or 4 team trade.
I mean, I'll give you the other team that they were talking about, Miami. First of all, the deal was never going to get done with Miami because they wanted Bam Adebayo, and they already have a 5-year rookie extension with Ben Simmons on the roster. So they can't even make the deal that they want.
Unless you were getting rid of Simmons, and I don't know who would touch Simmons at this point.
Nobody. He's stuck. I don't know if you guys saw it the other day. He won his case for his arbitration for his money.
I'm sorry. Freaking what?
Or not that he won his case. They settled, I think. But
yeah, they settled, but still, freaking what? So I understand the issues of mental health, but not playing, and you're going to get some pay for it?
Tom, you already know my thoughts on Ben Simmons in that situation. He shouldn't get any money because he didn't play last year. I don't care if it's a mental situation or not. If you're off the court, you're off the court. You don't get paid.
But the Ben Simmons issue aside, that doesn't answer why the hell all of a sudden all this, and it's just, it feels, after all this drama, it kind of feels like a letdown. I'm not saying that as a fan of the team from the other side here in New York. I'm saying that as, okay, when this news first broke, right as free agency was started, Johnny, you and I both said it, I think, in minutes. It was going to be a trade of historic proportions. We were going to see first-round picks and swaps, young talent like crazy. Yeah.
Well, let me correct one thing, which is that's what the media said. The media said it was going to be a historical trade. There was no one in the NBA, technically, except for anonymous sources in the front offices, that said it was going to be a historic trade. So I think that's partially the media's fault for putting that out there.
Yeah, but you just think with Durant's kind of contract and the superstar player that he is, you would assume that something like that was going to happen.
I actually think the large contract is what stopped him from being traded in the first place. Because if you look at the Harden situation, his contract was essentially up. That's why he was able to be traded. And then he just signed, believe it or not, I give James Harden credit because he took less money so that they could bring more players into Philadelphia. I never thought that was going to be the case. Don't get me wrong. James Harden has made like $220 million in his NBA career. So it's not like he's poor and looking for money. But even James Harden, the guy that we look at as one of the most attitudinal players in the NBA, took less money. KD, no way. He's not taking less money. He thinks he's the best, greatest player in the NBA right now, which is not true.
So I'm going to make an assumption now. Now that KD is all of a sudden staying and nobody's getting fired. So we actually reported, I think it was last week, that the Lakers were all of a sudden now suddenly willing out of nowhere to offer their 2027 and 2029 picks in a potential deal involving Kyrie. I guess that's off now.
I mean, they can do whatever they want.
I know. It's just weird because we see that report that now 2 first-round picks were suddenly on the table, like all these other teams wanted, and then LeBron's extension came up. So the whole idea was like, okay, now you have LeBron's extension, and now you have the 2 picks on the table that they really wanted Kyrie. Actually, that's something we got to talk about too.
Well, before we go there, just to clarify a point you said on the LeBron James front. LeBron James just screwed his own roster by taking the max money for 2 years. I think it was like 2 years, $97.2 million or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. Why are you taking max money if you're looking for the team, or better yet, I should say, himself as the GM, looking to bring in players to play around him? So you're hurting yourself.
Right. No, my question was, that we see this little news bit. We see James getting the extension. We see that they're now willing to throw 2 first-round picks to get Kyrie Irving and maybe move Russell Westbrook's contract. And I said after the LeBron, when those 2 stories came out, that basically, okay, this is like you said, Nick, that the Lakers just screwed over the cap situation. This is going to be LeBron's last hurrah, and then he's going to opt out in his little opt-out option, go play with Bronny, and then 24, 25, because Bronny is going to be able to get drafted in the 24 draft, I believe.
Yeah.
So then, actually, I told the guys this, and I haven't told you, Johnny, that basically my theory is LeBron's just going to go wherever Bronny gets drafted to, and then the next day after free agency, we're going to see a little column in the Players Tribune or something saying 24-25 will be my final season in the NBA.
So let me throw this theory out there. So if Bronny ends up with the Orlando Magic,
I think LeBron would sign with the Orlando Magic.
That first of all, that's stupid.
Nick, unless him getting to hang around all his buddies, screwing the cap situation over and everything, is pressuring the Lakers to, even if they needed to trade up and draft Bronny. And
they're not doing that. First of all, they have way too much investment on that roster, and I'm talking about older players and investment. And Johnny,
I'm not saying that they were going to do. I'm saying, is this maybe LeBron putting the pressure on them?
There's no reason, because he can just leave if he wanted to after that 2-year contract. If he wanted
to, because he's going to go wherever Bronny goes.
And by the way, he's going to be like 40 at the end of that contract anyway. And someone will give him $25 million at his age 40 season to play wherever it goes. And by the way, most teams are going to do that for jersey sales. That's it. And ticket sales. That's all they're doing it for. They're not doing it to win a, well, they might win one playoff series. But
don't put the thought in my head that the Knicks might do that.
Can you imagine if Bronny ends up in a Knicks uniform?
It'd be so Knicks-like to get somebody at the end of their career, they get like Jalen Rose or Jason Kidd or along those lines. They get him at the very, very end.
Yeah, they draft Bronny just to get LeBron.
Well, maybe the Knicks may not even have a first-round pick by 2024. I know we'll get to that in just a moment.
Oh, yeah, we'll get to that. They may not
have a first-round pick in 2024, so we won't have to worry about that.
I want to finish up on the KD situation, because this situation is frustrating to me, all right? I mean, he doesn't want to be here. Everyone who says, oh, well, the team talked him back into being here, he's now in force mode to be with the Brooklyn Nets roster. How do you go all of a sudden from saying, I'm pissed off, I'm going to cause a ruckus, which we reported last week, to I'm here, I'm going to listen to everybody, Steve Nash is my coach, Sean Marks is my GM, I'm here.
Because
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, because they're all screwed. Because they're all screwed. KD's screwed with his contract. They're screwed with the plays that they're locked into. Everybody's screwed at this point, so they're making the best of a situation.
That's I was going to say, because this is now less than 2 months since Durant initially demanded a trade. He demanded that trade on June 30th. I remember thinking going to the week of 4th of July, it was supposed to be a quiet week, and then boom, the Durant news breaks out of nowhere. So what changed in 2 months that Durant says that he wants to make this happen? And let's be honest, Nick, and you know this, you're a Nets fan, you know this. This is not going to be the last time that we go through a saga involving Durant, Kyrie, and the Nets.
I'll tell you right now, if the first month of the season is bad and they start like 0-10, like which I don't think they will, but like if they get off to a really bad start, he's going to demand a trade again.
Well, Nick, sorry, but can we go back to my question very briefly? I said, now that KD is back, does that mean even with the Lakers giving LeBron the extension, putting up the 2 first-round picks for sale, do you see the Kyrie move still happening?
It can't happen now because KD agreed to be back on the roster. So now you're going to want Kyrie there as a number 2. If KD was not there, and you're basically fire sailing everything, then yeah, you do the trade. And I still don't, and I'll say this again, and I said this to both of you, the Lakers are going to bail out the Nets with 2 first-round picks to take Kyrie Irving? Now, Nick Federo is not here this week, made a great joke. Maybe LeBron is enticing him with an acting gig for Space Jam 3.
Now, I remember the theory, Nick Morrison, in all seriousness, was that the 2 first-round picks was because they would trade Russell Westbrook to the Nets, and then the Nets would use one of those first-round picks to entice another team to take on Westbrook's
which is stupid. It's stupid. First of all, if I was any team around the NBA, I would say, F you, Lakers, I'm not taking your $48 million off your hand. That was your mistake. You took the contract from the Rockets, who took it from the Thunder. I mean, this man, the reason he has to jump from team to team is because he's not a good player. He's not an offensive player anymore. What was he shooting, like 7 or 8% from three-point range the past 2 seasons?
Sorry, I'm too busy playing hot potato like they've been doing with Russell Westbrook.
And don't get me wrong, Russell Westbrook was a good player. He was the triple-doubles guy for a couple of years. And then once that wore off, and he's not a team player. It's not, and that's no secret, by the way. He's not a team player. He might pass the ball and do all that stuff, but he's going to try and go out like 1 versus 5 and score 80 points. He thinks he's Kobe Bryant. But he's not. And the other thing is, like, everyone says, like, KD wants to be in the top 5 greatest players of all time. And I said this in the last week's show, and I said it in a minute a couple of weeks ago. He's never going to be a top 5 player all time. Never. Never going to be a top 5 player. Until he can lead a team by himself, he's never going to do that. And I'll go back to something I said last week as well. In Golden State, that was Steph Curry's team. 100% Steph Curry's team. As much as KD was at his height, and he really helped that team, obviously, because they needed one more star, Steph Curry is the leader, the captain, the guy who pushes all the buttons. If Steph Curry's not there, they don't win any championships. And I know that's a bold statement, but Steph Curry is the glue that holds that team together.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I'm just making sure you're not trying to be a troll.
Enough with the Twitter trolling. I'm so done, and I'll do it too.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
And that's my whole thought on KD trolling. Now he's trolling news people from Spectrum News in Texas. I mean, KD, stop trolling and work on your game. I know that's a difficult concept, but...
Nick, question. How do you feel about the likes of Isaiah Thomas and Patrick Beverley complaining, though, that basically the whole KD drama for the last 2 months has made it, I don't want to say impossible, but harder to gauge some of these still remaining free agents on where they can go based on whatever was going to happen in the potential trade.
See, it's interesting because in the NBA, a lot of things are based around the big names at the top. When LeBron was a free agent a couple of years ago, everyone had to wait until he said where he was going to play. He basically had a one-way ticket to go anywhere he wanted when he was a free agent. So it all depended on where he went. KD, much different story. You can't trust KD to stay on a roster. He went, after winning with Golden State, he had a fight with Draymond Green, and basically that is when he eventually demanded a trade. Right, and that was the end.
Well, not the trade, because he was a free agent.
I mean, a free agent, but yes. And look at the fight he had with Russell Westbrook. I mean, he doesn't get along with anybody at all. Anyone who's a number 2 to his number 1, and I would even throw Kyrie Irving in there as well. Him and Kyrie don't get along. I remember when the Brooklyn Nets were shopping and the Knicks were shopping and everyone was shopping in free agency. Well, look, KD and Kyrie are friends. That means they're basically going to go everywhere they're going to go where the other one goes. Well, guess what? Now you're having buyer's remorse.
Speaking of buyer's remorse, well, potentially, we don't know. So the Knicks and Jazz have reopened talks over Donovan Mitchell, and there was a report about a potential offer that the Knicks had given the Jazz, and the Jazz had basically rejected it.
I'm not surprised.
I'm going to try and pull up the full trade here on my phone.
Well, so let the resident Knicks fan go first.
So
okay.
The report from Shams on Monday was it was Fournier, it was Obi Toppin, and 5 first-round picks. 2 of them were
unprotected. Yeah.
Unprotected, yeah. And let me tell you, as the resident Knicks fan, I got 2 things about that. Number one, if that is indeed the deal, well, first of all, let me start. Number one, that is not going to get it done. But number 2, if Danny Ainge agrees to that deal, as a Knicks fan, you got to be ecstatic about that, because you keep RJ Barrett and you keep some extra first-round picks, and you keep the likes of McBride and Grimes. I mean, you got to be ecstatic about that. Now, again, I say that as somebody who thinks that that's not going to get it done. And
correct. And it seems like the reports, I don't know if you saw them, Johnny, but it seems like basically Barrett or Grimes would have to be involved in this deal.
Yeah, and look, I've said this constantly. If you are the Knicks, you cannot trade RJ Barrett in this deal to get Donovan Mitchell. If the Jazz are demanding Barrett, then you walk away.
You got to walk off the table if Barrett's on the
Knicks have so many first-round picks over the next couple of years.
Like, Johnny, if you're saying it would take you'd have to throw in Barrett and like 4 extra picks, I would say I'll give you Grimes and 6 extra picks. We need to keep Barrett.
You have all the extra picks for a reason. You built it up for stuff like this. And for the people that are complaining, oh, what are you going to do with your first-round picks? The Knicks are going to have such a young group of players for the next several years. If you get Mitchell and you keep Barrett, that those first-round picks are not going to be needed. You're going to have.
Well, let me say one thing. Okay. Let me say one thing though, which is even though if you get Mitchell, you still have the potential of exiting out of the first round of the playoffs. You don't have enough to win and enough to structure. Even if he's the lead star, he's not a point guard either.
Nick,
sorry, Johnny. But the Knicks. We're talking about the draft like the Knicks had the best of luck in the draft. It's pretty clear they don't.
They don't know how to use their draft picks. They don't know how to use them.
Barrett, who's a draft pick, I'm telling you, is shaping up to be the next star in this league. He has continued to make strides over the first couple of years of his career that he can actually do that. He can be like that. Mitchell Robinson, who they just gave a 4-year extension to this offseason, was a Knicks draft pick.
I'd be careful with that because you know how the Knicks organization works. They'll build someone up for a couple of years. Then they'll realize, oh, wait, we can't figure this out. And then we're going to trade him, and then we're going to get more experienced players across the league, and then it screws them over.
But you see, they're doing things differently now, and that's why I think you have to be happy. And Nick, I totally agree, and that's my next point here. I am also trying to keep this in perspective too. Should the Knicks get Donovan Mitchell, and again, this is without trading Barrett, the Knicks still, to me, their ceiling going into next season is maybe a top 6 team. They might be ahead. They probably will have to play in the play-in tournament because that's where their ceiling is going to be. they're not. I mean, look at the problem the Knicks run into now. Is they're finally doing this the right way, but they're doing this in now an Eastern Conference, which is as strong and as deep as it's ever been before. In years past, the Western Conference was always the deep conference, and the East was always weak. It's now the conferences have switched.
Yeah, the West is kind of weak now, in my opinion.
It's not that strong. I mean, it's Phoenix, really. I mean, it's Phoenix and Golden State, really. I mean, you want to say maybe the Clippers?
Maybe.
I mean, unfortunately,
Denver, yeah.
Unfortunately, and not that I like this, but you have to include the Lakers with LeBron. Unfortunately, not that I want to, but everyone's going to.
Well,
because
they could get into the play-in tournament because the West is not that strong. I mean, you want to throw maybe the Timberwolves in after they made the crazy deal.
Oh, Timberwolves, absolutely. The Timberwolves
actually,
I'm very high on.
I would take the Timberwolves as a top 4 team after making that trade.
Agree.
Yeah,
after the trade,
it was funny. We were talking about Durant, and I think the historical trade talk came after that crazy deal when they gave up 6 first-round picks for Gobert. But yeah, I mean, the Knicks to me, I mean, but the thing they're going to have though is they're going to have a core group of players with Brunson, Barrett, Mitchell, Robinson, Harkenstein, and this. So I mean, I needed to start. I mean, you could fill in those other bench spots with veteran players. That's fine.
Correct, and you can manage your cap situation to maybe you can get another star in a couple of years' time. However, right before we started our recording of this, SNY came out with a report that basically they call it decision makers are now considering putting Barrett in a potential offer for Mitchell.
All right, wait a minute. Time out.
We know who the decision maker. We know who this.
Time out. Okay. And because I'm tired of this with the Knicks organization, and I'm sure Johnny's tired of this too, because we've heard this. You're tired of it too. Over the last 10 years, the decision maker is James Dolan. That's it. Anyone in the media who doesn't realize it's James Dolan, you're an idiot. So I know that's harsh, but it's true.
Tell you that it's Worldwide West and Leon Rose and all those guys too.
You know what?
We know it's Dolan.
Because it's typical of Dolan. Give up all the young talent for a star. And then based around what your roster construction would be, he may not even fit a scheme.
Who's aging? Don't forget that, too. It's usually an aging star. Now, by the way, Leon Rose is a hack. Okay? I'm tired of this. Leon Rose is an agent who basically said, I don't want to be in the agency business anymore, and somehow got a job in the Knicks front office. Let's see. How did that work last time when they took a coach or an agent and put them in the front office? Does Phil Jackson ring a bell to you? I'm sorry, it doesn't work.
I don't want it to, but yes, it does.
And unfortunately, what's ironic, coming from Los Angeles, the Knicks are turning into a Hollywood franchise. A bunch of fakes trying to make it big.
Yeah, but let's also be fair, too. They're not Hollywood because people are not flocking to them.
No. I'm saying
James Dolan has ruined that. People are not going to the Knicks because of James Dolan.
I'm saying they're acting Hollywood. They're trying to make a bunch of moves. They're trying to entice free agents to come here, and it's not working.
It hasn't worked for a very, very, very long time.
And one other point, because you mentioned Gobert before and the historic deal, that's to connect it back for a second. That's why Durant couldn't be traded, because Gobert was traded for such a historically high price that it made it impossible for Durant. If Gobert went for 6 picks plus like 4 players, you would have had to trade Durant for double. So you're talking about 10 to 12 picks and like 5, 6, 7 players. No team was going to do it. And actually, I don't blame those teams because you would have been selling your whole franchise to get Kevin Durant. So there was no way for that Durant deal to be done. This is the same issue. The Jazz, because of the Gobert deal, should be asking for more than what Gobert was traded for.
Well, see, so just to piggyback off what Tom was saying, this SNY report that came out on Tuesday night says that the Jazz are seeking at least multiple first-round picks, which we know the Knicks have several of them. Utah would want at least one of the trio of Obi Toppin, Quentin Grimes, and Emmanuel Quickly in a trade if Barrett is included. Again, I'd keep Barrett, and I would trade those other 3 guys.
I would trade Grimes.
I would trade all. I have no problem getting rid of Toppin, Grimes, and Quickly, and multiple first-round picks for Mitchell.
Do we know what Mitchell's contract situation is? Because at this point, and I'll let you finish your point, Johnny. But what I was going to say, if he's a free agent at the end of the year, I would just say F it and let him play out his season, then pick him up a free agency.
I don't think that's
far
the
from
case.
it. Nick. So 22-23, he's making 30 million. 23-24, 32.6. 24-25, 34.8. Then 25, he has a player option. 25-26, 37 million. And then 26, if he doesn't use the player option and he played 25-26, then 26.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
30. At age 30, he becomes a free agent.
He just signed a max extension. I forgot. I think last year.
Right.
So this situation is not good. The numbers, first of all, and I'll say it again, the numbers have to match. People forget that in the media. People forget that as NBA fans. It's not the trade machine. It's not MLB The Show where you can put forced trades on and you could trade a minor league A player for your all-star player of choice.
Wait, like what I've done in the show back in the past?
Right. You want to be the Yankees of the past and you want to buy every all-star via trade.
Well, I'll trade. I'll throw in Randall. I'll throw in Derrick Rose if you want. If Utah wants to match it up, that's fine. I mean, remember, Randall's 4-year, $117 million contract's only kicking in this season.
But you know what I don't get? Why can't the Knicks try to actually build the team instead of flocking for a major trade for an all-star?
I think they are. I think
they are. I think it's James Dolan being tempted by his old bad habits.
But I believe the Knicks are doing this the right way. It's just this should have happened a long time ago. This should have happened 15 years ago. It should. That's why I sometimes get aggravated over this, because this is something the Knicks should have done 15 years ago. But you know what it is? And this is something that we've spoken about in a lot of sports, and when it comes to New York teams, they hate the word rebuild. But you know what? Look at the other team at Madison Square Garden, and you know what? They did a rebuild, and look where they are. They were in the Eastern Conference Finals of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And you know why the Rangers do better than the Knicks in terms of longevity and playoffs and stuff? Because you know what happens with the Rangers?
Dolan doesn't touch them.
James Dolan stays away from the New York Rangers.
Yep.
So why does he do that for the Knicks then?
Because the Knicks are a more valuable franchise.
Oh,
you see, it's always money, Nick. Look at it. Look at the Forbes list that comes out every year. What two teams are always on the Forbes list every year?
I know.
It's the Dallas Cowboys and the New York Knicks. Two teams that haven't won a damn thing in forever, but are always up there.
I'm curious to see what the Knicks franchise value is.
I think it's in the billions.
No, I know it's in the billions, but I'm trying to look it up. 6.12 billion as of 2021.
Exactly.
Which, by the way, that's a joke. I think that's ridiculous. They're not worth $6 billion. I don't care if you have MSG. I don't care what deals you have. This team has not won anything.
I understand that. Look, they've had one good year one fantastic year in the 21st century, and that was the 2012-2013 team that won 54 games.
That was with J.R. Smith and his tank, wasn't it?
Well, that was and that's a team that should have gone farther if it wasn't for J.R. Smith's antics against the Celtics in the playoffs.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I finally feel like, though, you know what? We're doing this the right way. And again, Donovan Mitchell. Again, to me, he only makes the Knicks a top 5-6 team, probably a team to play in tournament. But you get him at age 25 to go along with this younger group of core players that they have. You know, bringing in Jalen Brunson, who could. I know he's not a top 10 point guard, but he can help. You know, Barrett, who can take the next step. Randall, who probably is going to be the wild card in all this. Mitchell Robinson, and
you're forgetting one key word though. It's the giant C word with a team. It's chemistry.
Well, that's going to be the next step. Yep. But I mean, that's what. But I like what they're doing here. And the problem is too. See, the thing is, you get Mitchell in here, and you brought in Brunson. Guys like Obi Toppin and Quickly don't really have roles on this team. They'd be bench players,
right? And that's the problem. Like you have to figure out how this team is going to mesh. You need more than Donovan Mitchell. Maybe Donovan Mitchell leads to another star or two. Maybe,
absolutely. I
we'll
agree with that. I mean, I'm just saying I'd be jumping for joy because if you get Mitchell if you don't trade Barrett and you get Mitchell in here, I mean, it's a step. That's really what it is. It's not the Knicks don't become a top 3 team because of this move they make it. I mean, it gets them though. the next step. It gets them there. Then they have to bring in another star. I agree with that.
I think that if they get Donovan Mitchell, I think they're a 5 or a 6 seed in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, I can't argue that because they're not better than because even though the mess that the Brooklyn Nets are in, the Nets are a better team than the Knicks. The Boston Celtics are better. The Milwaukee Bucks are better.
I would say the Nets and the Knicks
are better.
I would say the Nets and the Knicks finish 5-6, however you want to reverse it.
Well,
wherever they finish.
If the Nets are fully together and stuff, I mean, come on. The Knicks don't have a player like Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving on the team. That's just
but who are the Nets beating? Who are the Nets beating above them? They're not.
They're not. And I love that their odds actually went to like 9-1, like the fourth best odds after this decision with Durant.
Freaking ridiculous.
First of all, there's no chemistry, and this is what I like about Vegas sportsbooks. And we're going to get into it once we do the NFL picks in a week.
Yeah,
that the sportsbooks are deceiving when they say, "Oh, well, we got KD back, we got Kyrie, we have Ben Simmons lurking in the distance," which is stupid, by the way.
Yeah.
And
but if you don't make any changes to your team that basically flopped last season, what are you going to expect?
No, I'm agreeing.
Insanity, gentlemen. What's the definition of insanity?
Doing the same thing over and over again.
And expecting a different result, right?
Yeah, but you could say technically the Knicks and the Nets are both the definition of insanity
for millions of reasons. Yes.
If the Knicks trade R.J. Barrett and in this Donovan Mitchell deal, absolutely.
Unfortunately, though, like you said, James Dolan, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yeah. And unfortunately, I wouldn't be surprised. And hopefully, let's see if I can turn my crystal ball on again for the third straight week. Unfortunately, and I'm going to say this, and Knicks fans are not going to be happy. I think R.J. Barrett is going to be part of that trade.
No, the thing is, I think Knicks fans are going to be happy just at getting Donovan Mitchell alone. It's like, do you not see what is going on here?
No, but Tom, I would counter that a little bit. I would not be happy if they traded Barrett to get Mitchell.
Oh, no, I'm not saying you or I. I'm saying, but the average Knicks fan might be. They'll see Mitchell and it's just, yes.
Now you're probably right.
That
would be me if we got Mitchell without trading Barrett.
By the way, Tom, that was like Nets. That was like Nets fans when KD and Kyrie came in for the first time. Oh my God, we're gonna win 4, 5, 6 championships. We're gonna be like Miami when LeBron and Chris Bosh and D Wade were all together. Not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8. 1 million.
But where's Udonis Haslem and all the other valuable players like Ray Allen and stuff on the Nets team? It's not there.
Right, and that's I like Seth Curry on the Nets roster. I think that was a great pickup when they made it. DeAndre Jordan was a complete flop, and somehow he got $40 million. Don't ask me why. I don't know.
And Andre Drummond too. Yep.
But I don't like the big three. We're going away from it now. Finally, the big three is really not a thing anymore.
You know why? Because LeBron, D Wade, and Bosh were the last ones. It doesn't work anymore.
Well,
because you need role players.
Exactly. Yes.
I would debate also the Rondo, KG, and Paul Pierce was also a good one.
Yeah, that was. But but that's why Donovan Mitchell is not. And you're right, Nick. Donovan Mitchell coming here, it's a good start, but it's not enough.
It's not enough, and like I said, I think Dolan's going to fall for it, and I think he's just going to say, all right, bye, we'll take Donovan Mitchell.
I wonder, though, and I know there are other teams that are involved in the Mitchell sweepstakes, but I do like the fact that the Knicks, because originally, and we had spoken about this on this show and my show, they were talking about Barrett, and they walked away from it because they didn't rush it. But once Dolan gets involved, though, it might change. Well, and I hope he does not. But the further along this goes in the offseason, I think it actually does benefit the Knicks because the Jazz are going to be adamant about trading Mitchell before the season starts. Now, if the Knicks don't want to give up Barrett, then you might see guys, it seems like maybe Washington or Charlotte, who have been reported, make a move. But the Knicks have the assets. They have the first-round picks. They have the other players they could to go get him. So that's something to watch here in the next month or so before training camp and the preseason starts.
We'll see what happens. I mean, there's going to be plenty of discussion on this, and like I said, my crystal ball is telling me, since I've been right the last 2 weeks with some of these things, I just think R.J. Barrett's going to be in this deal. So,
and if that's the case, the Knicks should say no deal.
I agree with you. All right. So finally, go ahead.
Finally. All right. Going from that, the NBA schedule released just quickly. Any thoughts on on this?
I mean, I think I did a minute on the Christmas schedule.
Which I actually agree with the both of you that Lakers Mavs game is the worst one on that schedule.
My mentions got blown up when I was talking about the fact that the Knicks should be playing on Christmas Day.
I agree with you. First of all, either the Knicks or the Nets, you need a New York market team on Christmas. You have to.
And the Knicks, when they've played on Christmas Day, have never been in prime time. It's always one of the first two games, and they're going to be at a 2:30 Eastern game. That's totally fine.
And you know what's funny? Sorry, Johnny, to interrupt, but you know what's funny? I think the NBA would have chosen the Nets, but we had no idea what was going on with the KD situation.
Well, and I think you're right. I think that, first of all, if KD's traded, like they're a second thought this year in general. Like no one's going to care who the Nets were this year.
That's my one defense of people who are unhappy about the Knicks over the Nets is because unfortunately there was just so much uncertainty with KD that the NBA couldn't afford to put the Nets in the schedule.
And look who they gave the Knicks to play at MSG on Christmas
76ers.
Day.
That's a division rivalry.
I mean, that's a huge, and that's going to be a critical East. I mean, I know it's only going to be December 25th, but it's Eastern Conference matchup with the Sixers. By the way, that's another team I would say that's better than the Knicks too. So even if they get Mitchell, so that's another team to put ahead of them. But you get Harden and Joel Embiid at MSG. I mean, that's a great matchup. 2:30 in the afternoon, it's perfect. It doesn't really overlap with the football that's going to be happening on Christmas Day, so it's fine.
Well, so I'm looking at the 5 games, and the way I look at them is Bucks Celtics is probably the best game on that schedule, in my opinion. Having Giannis and Jason Tatum up against on, I think what is that? It's the game before the primetime game.
I think that's the first game. It's at noon.
No, it's at 5 o'clock.
Oh, is
5
it
o'clock.
5? Okay.
So I think that's the best game. I could really give two craps about Suns Nuggets because, again, the Suns haven't proven themselves yet. And
I think that's a way better matchup than Lakers Mavericks, though.
No, I agree, but no one cares about the Suns Nuggets. Like no one is paying attention to them. Who are the Nuggets? They have injuries up the wazoo. Like no one's paying attention.
Because it's going to be the Suns and all their players. It's going to be Nikola Jokic.
Well, I like Jokic, but why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? The Sun star who just signed the max extension. Why am I forgetting? What? No, the one who's dating the Kardashian. I'm forgetting his name all of a sudden.
I don't know.
But
that's like the Kardashian question goes over my head. That's not.
I'm looking it up, but the Suns. I don't trust the Suns. Do you trust the Suns? Oh, Booker, Devin Booker.
Devin Booker, yeah.
I don't trust the Suns after what happened. And Chris Paul's overpaid. Chris Paul gets hurt. Would you trust Chris Paul? I wouldn't. I mean, the games that I like: Bucks, Celtics, Grizzlies, Warriors. Grizzlies Warriors is going to be an amazing game. Did you see all the trash talk that came down between those two teams? And I'm Johnny, I'm sure you saw it too, right?
What's that?
The trash talk between the Grizzlies and the Warriors after their playoff series?
Yes.
I think that's going to be an amazing game. I really do. And yes. The Grizzlies are up and coming. They really are.
Okay, so here's what it is. So the 76ers and the Knicks are the first game. They're at 12 Eastern, which the Knicks, I think the last couple of years the Knicks have played on Christmas Day, which, by the way, should be every year at MSG. They've always been the first game, which I think is great. You start with that, and then you work your way down. You have Lakers Mavericks at 2:30 Eastern, Bucks Celtics at 5, Grizzlies Warriors at 8, and then Suns Nuggets at 10:30 Eastern. So that's the matchup. But then you also remember have football happening on Christmas Day on Sunday. Now most of the teams are playing Christmas Eve that week, but
right,
yeah. Because Christmas Day is usually an NBA holiday, but just with the way it's fallen this year.
Wait. Are you? Oh, I'm sorry. I had to turn my attention away for a second. You're talking about NFL is playing on Christmas Eve this year, right?
Yeah. Well, most of the teams are going to play on Christmas Eve, and they only have a few games on Christmas Day because usually Christmas Day when it falls on a Sunday, they'll do it on Eve. But
here's the issue. Here's the issue, though. The issue is, first of all, the Lakers should not be playing on Christmas this year. At all. Sorry, Lakers are not good. They won a Los Angeles team like they won a New York team.
Nick, it's they won a Los Angeles team and it's LeBron.
I hate to say it, but the Clippers are technically a better team than the Lakers.
They are, but I would say this, and I think Tom was getting at it. One of the things they also do on the NBA, and people had said it on my Twitter feed when we were discussing this. It's marketing.
Yeah, I don't care though. In the NBA's sake, LeBron is not the most marketable player anymore.
But that's why the Knicks are always on Christmas Day, because they are the market. They're the market, and it's just the reality. I mean, I get where you're coming from with that. They should probably, if you wanted an ideal matchup, probably at that point Clippers Mavericks would be better.
First of all, I don't even think Luka should be playing on Christmas Day. To be quite honest, what has Luka done the past couple of years? A bunch of exits in the first round.
And you wonder what he's going to do this year. You wonder if him losing Brunson, how that's going to affect him next season.
Who are the Mavericks this coming year? They're nobodies. I know Mark Cuban owns the franchise, and he walks around like, ho, 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 it's my team, and I'm going to win. Well, they're not good. And unfortunately, I don't think Luka's a franchise leader. That's my opinion. He's out of shape. There's reports that he's been lazy in the workout process. And so you have LeBron versus Luka. That's your big marketing in that game. Yawn. Boring.
You might be dealing with the football game that's happening at that time, too. So
hopefully it's not a crappy football game, or I'm not going to be watching any sports. But long story short, Bucks Celtics. Yeah, I would take that.
Okay, we've talked way too much. 45 minutes of NBA. Let's get to baseball.
Okay.
All right. Obviously, we have to start with this one. Marcell Ozuna getting arrested for DUI early on Friday morning, where he turns to the cops as they approach him, basically says, I'm Ozuna for the Braves. It's all right. I'm Ozuna from the Braves. And then 2 days later, Braves put him in the starting lineup.
I mean,
exactly.
My reaction when that lineup card came out on Sunday was, what the?
You can say it here. It's okay.
But I mean, how tone deaf are you if you're the Atlanta Braves to put him in the lineup 2 days later?
This is Major League Baseball. They let players with abuse problems back on the field. Look at what happened to Chapman. What did he get, 5 games and then he was back on the field?
I think it was 25.
Well, but he was allowed to play while the investigation was going on.
Well, that's true. Yes.
So MLB doesn't know how to handle it. MLB has a lot of issues, which we're going to get into. But this whole thing where, and Johnny, you brought it up well on your show, that the body cam footage, what is it? Is it made up? Is it fake?
That's what the Braves organization was basically telling you, was that it was made up. I mean, geez. I just get, and I'm just trying to find this statement because they came out with a statement which was absolutely absurd when you look.
I mean, I know that Marcell Ozuna's head is in the clouds, but like, really, the Braves organization is going to back him up between the domestic violence that happened last year and now the DUI?
Yeah, I mean, this and that's the thing too. This is not the first instance of Marcell Ozuna being in trouble with the law.
And by the way, a retroactive 20-game suspension for domestic violence. We were all talking about this before we started, but that's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
The Braves statement on
it's funny.
I'm sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
It's funny. Starlin Castro got 80 games. They actually managed to get that one pretty good, but for whatever reason, maybe you can say that one was a little light, but at least 80 games, at least that half a season, 20 games and 20 retroactive games. So you're not even technically punishing him.
No, you know why? Because Marcell Ozuna is considered a bigger name than Starlin Castro. That's why.
And I would actually disagree on that one.
This was the Braves statement that they put.
Maybe it's just the Yankee. Maybe it's just the Yankee fan in me.
Maybe.
This is what the Braves issued in a response to the arrest, and when they made this statement, they did not address whether Ozuna would put on a Braves uniform again. And obviously, we know they put it on 2 days later. Quote, the Atlanta Braves are aware of Marcell Ozuna's arrest this morning and are still gathering all the facts pertaining to the incident. Our organization takes these matters very seriously and are obviously disappointed in the situation as this is a legal matter. We will have no further comment until the process is complete. So they're still gathering all the facts pertaining to the incident. Of course, body cam. I mean, that's a fact right there. Our organization takes these matters very seriously. Okay, if you take these matters very seriously, then why the hell is he in the lineup 2 days later?
Well, money. Money's one reason. And two,
he's in the middle of a 4-year, $64 million contract. But, I mean, come on, guys. You are so tone deaf to what's going on by putting him in the lineup 2 days later. And think about it. So they're taking on the Houston Astros this weekend. This is the only player, with him being in the lineup, this is the only player that would have actually been getting louder boos than the freaking Houston Astros.
Well, that's not saying much. I mean, the Astros had cheating issues and all that stuff, but I wouldn't say it's the same thing.
I'm not comparing the two, but think about it. I mean, the Astros, they're still getting ridiculed for what happened 5 and 3 years ago, and yet you decide to put this guy who did something way worse than what the Houston Astros did in, and he's getting booed by his own fans, and including his own Braves announcer saying, "Here's Ozuna from the Braves." He's trolling his own player.
Well, I'm not surprised by that. Marcell Ozuna deserves to be out of this league and not playing. I mean, he should have been suspended for the rest of this season. I mean, you already had domestic violence, like I said last year, and now you have this whole DUI situation. How did the Braves not learn from the first situation that he's trouble? And basically, they should have gone after the contract too. I know this is my thing. I keep talking about voided contracts, but basically, it's one of those situations where you're just like, come on, man. Like, you're going to put him back on the field after a second incident? Really?
And what's funny is he hadn't even been on the field for a week because of poor play and other people just getting back into it. But for whatever reason, they had to put him in because other players needed rest.
Oh, please. That's an excuse because they don't want to actually give a real reason. Marcell Ozuna, don't get me wrong. Is he a good hitter? Yes. Is he a power hitter? Yes. But there's no excuse for breaking the law twice on two serious situations. There isn't.
And what's sad is when you look at these contracts, I was trying to do a little digging before, they can't really void the contract over a DUI.
Well, what about the domestic violence?
Because that's already been dealt with.
But I'm saying it's two incidents. It's two incidents now, though.
The experts are saying no. If the Braves cut him, they'll have to pay him the $32 million.
See, and this is the problem, and I don't understand this. In the new collective bargaining agreement, which I think we're going to be heading for another lockout if we have to keep changing all these rules, there needs to be rules in place that if you do something stupid and you break the law, your contract can be voided.
Well, Nick, Tom, I'll tell you right now, and I brought this up on my show on Tuesday. When we had that lockout, that 99-day lockout, and we were complaining about, let me take that back. The players and the owners were fighting over dollars. You don't think that in any one of those days they could have sat down together and said, "Oh, what are we going to do and talk about regarding off-the-field instances and going after things like that?" You don't think we could have actually fought for something like that in the 99 days that we were locked out?
No, and you know what? This is what was going through their head.
Yeah. Because it makes me go back and think about that lockout, which has damaged the sport in so many ways, and this could be another one too, that we decided, oh, you know what? When in the 99 days, let's not spend one moment on trying to actually fix something like this.
Yeah, but that wasn't the real issue, though. That was the money was the issue.
Well, I understand that. Yeah.
So I would actually make my XLB joke here, but if you actually guys go back to that second attempt of Vince McMahon's to start up the XFL, do you guys remember what some of the reasons were? Were because one of the stipulations that the players needed a criminal-free record because they were tired of Vince. It said that basically he noticed that fans were tired of the Mr. Goodell with the wheel of discipline. Obviously, the patriotic thing had to deal with the two being 2017, 2018, but
I don't know if you can legally make that claim. Like if you say you have a criminal-free record, I don't know if you can legally make that claim, like as a requirement. I don't know. Can you?
But I think no. My point was that Vince's point was, and I mean, we just dealt with it again with the Deshaun Watson situation about how these leagues handle situations, just one involving women and number two involving criminal activity.
Well, and that's the weird thing. Like, and I'm going to go to this again because
different circumstance. Marcell Ozuna could have killed somebody.
Well, that's my point. And here's what I don't understand. I said it about Deshaun. I'll say it about Marcell Ozuna, and I'm sure I'm going to say it about the next 5 players that have criminal issues on the field. They're athletes. That's why they get away with shit. Tell me where it's wrong. Because if this was a normal person who committed a DUI or committed domestic violence, they'd be in jail, and we wouldn't hear from them again. But because you're an athlete and you can afford to pay the bail or whatever money that you paid off the legal system, because the legal system is messed up, these athletes get out of it. And that's the unfortunate circumstance.
And especially because, Ozuna refused the breathalyzer test. If any average regular human being refuses a breathalyzer test, you know what happens?
That's an
They
arrest.
go to jail.
Well,
they get placed in arrest and they go to jail.
Well, he did get arrested technically, but he got out.
He got out.
No. Right. But Nick, basically, certain people will not take the breathalyzer because they don't want to be caught for a DUI. Unfortunately, that is
that's a crime.
You can't do that.
Yeah.
That's criminal activity if you refuse the breathalyzer.
Yeah, but
and by the way, for those asking about why are they asking him about is this your vehicle is the first question. It's for the purpose of capturing them for the DUI or DWI.
Right, because it could be a stolen vehicle.
Yep.
Right.
Watch.
But the fact that it was his vehicle and he said yes says basically that's him saying yes, I made the decision to get behind the wheel while I was intoxicated.
Right,
think about all these leagues that offer car services to these athletes, and they still. And that's another thing that just boggles my mind. I mean, it's like, what, do these guys not make enough money? I mean, come on, we would beg for our jobs to have car-free services if we ever needed them for stuff.
Well, I'll go back to an incident that happened quite a while back. Look at the Henry Ruggs situation, which now he's doing jail time, essentially for life. But my point is, the NFL said, and they have a ride-share service deal, that if any player anywhere around the country wants it for free, they would have it. But instead, he had to get in his fancy sports car, going 120-something miles an hour, and he ended up crashing into a car, exploding, and killing someone. It's not worth it. And he had a whole career ahead of him, too. But unfortunately, now, Marcell Ozuna is lucky he didn't kill anybody, because that would have been the end of his career. In baseball, if you kill somebody, it's the end of your career. Like, it's over.
And unfortunately, they wait until something like that happens before they actually decide to do that.
Thank you. I've made that argument on this show for years, that any leagues, not just baseball, it takes what usually happens when a historically made incident happens. That's the only, not even just death, but when a historic incident happens, that's the only time they change the rules on something.
And that's not even just sports, that's life.
Life, right. And that's the problem. The problem is, how about getting ahead of the initiative?
It's sports is almost like life in this regard. We're not proactive, we're reactive.
And that's the problem.
And that's a major problem. That's in everything.
I mean, we haven't even gotten to the rest of baseball yet, but Rob Manfred could have controlled this incident too. Why? He should have said after this incident happened, guess what? You're on the restricted list until this is figured out.
Yeah, where the hell is Rob Manfred right now in terms of all this? Oh, he was I think he was part of the Little League Classic talking about that.
Yep, there it is.
Thank you. Yep.
And by the way, there's a whole nother funny incident. I don't know if you saw what the Little League players said into the open mic about ESPN. Did you see that?
Yeah.
No.
The Little Leaguer essentially blamed ESPN for not getting a strike call behind home plate. It was really funny, by the way. But that's neither here nor there. My point is, what? What were you going to say?
Go ahead.
Oh,
I was going to go off.
What I was going to say is, Rob Manfred needs to get his shit together. And we've said this for many weeks and many months and many years, that he could have controlled this whole incident. Hey, Marcell, you're going on the restricted list until your case is heard. That's it. End of story. And you don't get paid for the days you're on the restricted list. Sorry, you broke the law.
I was just going to go on a tangent, say that basically Little League Baseball this year is just
a shit show.
Not even talk about what's going on. Not even talk about what's going on the field or about the kids' talents. Just that story about the cod now on the player.
Yes.
And then actually there was a local story here about some coach slapping the kid's hands too hard because he was aggressive after lunch. I'm sorry, Little League Baseball, the adults just turned into an absolute shit show.
Well, or you could get the kid who fell off the bunk bed.
Right, but that's not adults ruining the game.
No, but why are they sleeping on a bunk bed?
Well, they've been sleeping on bunk beds, but wasn't it like they didn't have a railing or something?
Yeah, he just fell out of the second story of the bunk bed. I think he got a concussion. All right, we're getting off topic. My point is that with the whole Rob Manfred thing and Marcell Ozuna, like every other situation with domestic violence, you can choose your sport, NFL, NHL, MLB, whatever sport you want to choose. They don't know how to handle domestic violence because somehow these guys or gals end up back on the court and they don't control it. And then what happens? They do it again. And they say, well, why did it happen again? Because you didn't control it the first time. Stupid.
All right. Speaking of stupid or maybe not, Arte Moreno, another kind of breaking news story from the last 24 hours, finally putting the Los Angeles Angels, which should be the Anaheim Angels, up for sale.
Look at all the failure.
That's my thought on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to think that you could have two of the most dynamic players in the sport and still not go anywhere. Think about it. Since winning the World Series in 2002, I mean, the Angels. I mean, where have they been since then?
I mean, they made the postseason once. I think it was like 2012 with Mike Trout and the Angels, and they got swept by I think the Red Sox, and they haven't made it back since.
And it's amazing to think when you have Shohei Ohtani who's doing what he's doing, and I know Trout's been hurt the last couple of years, but you have somebody like Mike Trout and what they've not been able to do with taking advantage of those two guys in the line on the roster.
Don't get me started with Ohtani. Don't get me started with Ohtani.
Well, wait a minute.
Ohtani's.
Did you see the Angels made a statement about the ownership process and looking for selling it or no?
I don't even care about that. That's not my point that I was going to go. Oh, so Shohei Ohtani. Right now, his market value is so high, and you could have gotten so much for him, whether now or even in the off season. You know, like that, it could have been a contingency plan, a wild contingency plan for, say, a team like Yankees or Mets. But now that you're going to be changing ownership, the guy's screwed because you're locking him. Basically, you're not going to be moving him. But the thing is, you're also on a clock because Shohei Ohtani, I think it's after next year, is a free agent. So you got to ensure that basically you lock this guy up for a while. But Shohei Ohtani, if you remember right before the trade deadline, you saw him basically admit it's a little hard to play, you know, when it's a little hard to be motivated to play when you're playing on a team like the Angels, like you said, Johnny, have just constantly come up short for the talent that they should be building teams around.
But wait a second. He actually made that statement and then he walked it back, if you remember.
Yeah, walk it back.
Well, he did because, I want to be traded, but I like the Angels as an organization. Shop! You're such a liar.
So, well, no, it's. I actually feel for the guy. I mean, he did kind of choose to play there, but not one. But here's the problem: Nick, not one, two generational talents, and you're telling me you can't build a efficient team around them? That shows you just how pathetic that front office is. That's
a failure as an organization. That goes all the way back up to the owner. I mean, I know we're in New York, or Johnny grew up in New York also, that we, as an organization, being Yankee fans, I think we're very lucky that we had the Steinbrenner family for all those years who was willing to spend the money to bring in whatever players needed to win. Now, it's questionable whether they actually won anything, but my point is they're willing to spend. The Angels, they've actually gone out and spent the money, but they're not spending it wisely. They had to eat the last 3 years of the Albert Pujols contract. They're stuck with the Mike Trout contract, which, by the way, I don't think Mike Trout should have ever re-signed with the Angels. That's just my opinion.
I'll go even further. I'll say it. Mike Trout, by doing that contract, partially ruined baseball. He set the market. He set the market,
but there's also not that many players that can do what Mike Trout's done.
Yeah, but
wait a second.
Listen, he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But
I don't agree with that.
Right now, I can't say first ballot.
I can't say that.
Okay, no. Okay, then you guys just made my argument stronger. You know why? Maybe not first ballot. How many championships?
0. But
how many pennants?
But you know what? Though, that's more than just on Trout, though. I mean, that goes. You know, the Angels.
But that's some stuff that the writers look at.
Right, but let me say one thing. Even though that contract was there. He had to be offered that contract to play there. It's not like he said, I mean, I'm sure there was negotiation, but the Angels still had to offer the contract, and he had to sign on the dotted line.
Okay, now that's fair. But if he got that, what the hell is Shohei Ohtani going to command?
Well, first of all,
the
the 10-year contracts are a thing of the past. I'll tell you that right now. It's not happening. No 10-year contracts. We've learned that they don't work.
But Nick, but then screw your new ownership. Trade Ohtani. Get all the value you can while you still have him.
I don't know. That's debatable because then the value of the franchise goes down if Ohtani's not there.
Yeah, think about.
But then you're screwed because, like you said, then maybe you trade Trout. But then who's going to take that massive contract?
No one, and actually you have an issue with Trout because Trout now has a back injury, which looks like he's going to be dealing with for the rest of his career.
This organization's screwed. I don't care if it's this ownership story because this organization is never getting back on track. It's going to be another decade before they're relevant again, and that's sad to say as a team that's supposed to have Los Angeles, a major city in its name. When, by the way, you don't even play in Los Angeles, you play in freaking Anaheim, you liars.
Well, do you remember? Excuse me. Do you remember the whole court battle they went over for the name? Do you remember that whole thing with Anaheim and the Los Angeles Angels? But if you want me to go back and look at all the teams, first of all, the Dodgers are always going to be number one. I don't care how good the Angels are. The Dodgers are always going to be top A-rate number one market. Then I would take the Giants. And then, I don't know, it's debatable between the A's and the Angels at that point.
Oh, no. There's no debate there. Number 3, it's the Angels. Come on. I mean, the A's are drawing 2,000 people a game right now. They can't get out of Oakland fast enough.
No, I understand, but I'm saying, and then I mean, if we're going to
if you want to say success-wise, then you have to put the A's over the Angels right now.
I mean, if we're going to stay in California, I would even take the Padres over the Angels at this point. I mean, so the Angels are what, 4th out of 6 teams in California,
5.
and 5, right? And they have nothing to show for it. Nothing. I mean, Mike Trout. Go ahead.
Okay, whoever the new owner is, it's going to take a lot of work. You're going to have to make a lot of decisions. I'm just going to leave it at that.
And I'm telling you right now, Ohtani's not going to be back there. I'm willing to make that prediction now.
I agree. I think
you could also look at the Mets. Look what happened with now. The Mets were in a better position than the Angels, but look what happens now with Steve Cohen. He's coming first year. The Mets right now are competing for a division title.
All right, I'm going to say this now. I think Ohtani could end up in a Met uniform.
I think it's a possibility.
I think it's a possibility of that, and I would not even rule out the possibility about them making a run at Aaron Judge in the offseason.
Well, that would be interesting. Can you imagine if Judge ended up in a Met uniform and maybe Ohtani could somehow end up in a Yankee uniform? How crazy that would be in New York.
All right, quickly, very quick thoughts. Like 1 or 2 sentences, by the way. Michael Harris, 8 years, $72 million extension to remain a Brave. The Braves are just throwing money like crazy. It's unbelievable.
Well, I got 2 things. Number 1, you're starting to see this trend with a few players now in the league where they sign them off, very young after very few games. Remember, Michael Harris, he played 71 major league games before the Braves gave him this extension.
This is stupid.
And what the Braves though were also doing is they're locking up a core group of players for a long, long time. They got Harris, Olsen, Acuna, Fried, Strider. I mean, I'm just starting with those names. Albies,
like the Austin Riley.
Yeah.
I guess I get Austin Riley. I kind of get Michael Harris. I don't know. I'm afraid about spending so much money in years in such a short time.
And Johnny knows what I'm about to say. This goes back to Tampa Bay again, doesn't it?
Well, they started it with Wander Franco.
What did he sign, a 12-year contract? And he's already hurt.
11 for 182.
And he's hurt.
Well, you have to remember, it's a risk from both sides in this. Harris could have made more money after 4 or 5 years. The Braves are risking that, if he tears his ACL, never becomes the same player again, they just wiped away 8 years. But what it also does is if Harris has a successful 8 years, it takes him to his age 29 season, and he can have another massive contract after that, too.
I don't know. I don't understand buying out the arbitration years. Now, I said this to both of you in different conversations. I think arbitration should be 2 years, not 3, because, again, that's unfair for some players that come up at 27, 28 years old, or 26, 27 years old, I should say. And then look at Pete Alonso. He's not going to get enough contract value out of himself. He was older. Jacob deGrom was, 30, essentially, by the time he got his first big contract?
Well, yeah, because Alonso and deGrom both came up late. Judge came up late too. This is his first time in the in his first time entering free agency. He's going to be 31 in the offseason. So.
And by the way, I'm tired, and MLB needs to change this rule too. Stop effing with the arbitration clock. I'm tired of it. It's stupid. Teams should not be. Yeah, another one.
Another one. Yep.
I'm tired of this. Fix the rules. You can't F with the arbitration clock. It's not fair to certain players.
See how many problems there are with the sport?
Too many. Too many. 99 problems and a Manfred ain't one.
Yep. Can keep that up for the whole night.
All right. Let's try. We can never do it when it comes to Yankees, but let's try to keep it as concise as possible. These second half woes. Now, the Yankees, of course, ended their series with the Rays and Jays, each with a win. They took at least one. We're recording in the middle of the second game with the Mets. But just, guys, for the first time in my life, I actually tweeted this recently. For the first time in my life, I'm stunned. Like, I have no answers. I'm confused. I don't know who to blame. I'm like, this team, before the All-Star break, was one of the best in baseball. And now they're not. Now they're actually like one of the worst.
I can tell you what it is. It's that basically, like Johnny says, streaky team.
Yeah, I think this is there's a few things to this. They were never going to keep up the pace they were at the start of the season. I think you had to expect that. The offense is a streaky offense. That's the roster that came in opening day, and that's what I think it is now. Also, when you have injuries to Stanton, and let's also be fair, this streak really started, especially when Matt Carpenter went down. And that's not something you ever would have said on your Yankee bingo card in 2022, that Matt Carpenter is a very important player. But to not have a contact, versatile lefty bat. Now, I know they thought they were going to get that with Benintendi, and it looks like he may be finally starting to turn it around a little bit. But Carpenter was that guy that was a lefty contact bat, and they don't really have that on the team. So right now they're playing a bunch of kids, and Judge, who I know hit his 47th home run on Monday against the Mets. But, Judge was getting cold there for a little while. LeMahieu was not really getting on base either. Donaldson's been I don't care what everybody says.
Bust.
Been a bust. I know he hit that walk-off grand slam against the Rays. But
Johnny, I think the problem when it comes to Judge is because of everybody else, though.
Agree.
If you're not afraid to pitch to, and when Rizzo, Stanton, and Judge, and you could even throw Glaber and Carpenter, when they were all hot and all batting next to one another, you couldn't just pitch around all of them. You had to figure out who to pitch to. And now nobody's afraid of Judge because who around him hits? Nobody.
Well, he doesn't have protection in the lineup. That's the problem.
Tom, I would say one thing real quick here. The crazy thing is, I'm not even really worried about this offense. I'm actually really more worried about the pitching staff.
Well, who is your pitching at this point?
Well, here's the thing. So Garrett Cole,
specifically the bull.
Well, the bullpen I am worried about, but think about this rotation for a second. Garrett Cole is suffering from something that Hank and I call on our show, one-inning itis. He can have 4 perfect innings, and then the 5th inning blows up. The game against the Orioles several weeks ago, great 6th inning, 7th inning, 7 runs. So I'm worried about him. I don't know if Nestor Cortez can do this for the full season. Luis Severino's not coming back to September. Domingo Germán.
And I'm done with Severino. I'm done. I'm throwing him in the bullpen.
Well, see, and that is why, and I know they were trying to get another starting pitcher. We all did our baseball trade deadline show together. And I know the Yankees are going to tell you that he was not going to have a spot on the postseason roster. Jordan Montgomery is they're missing him in a big way. And
that was a bust.
His last start, he goes out all the way on a one-hitter.
Well, okay. And maybe you can say that because this change of scenery. I mean, look what's going on with Joey Gallo. That would be my one defense. But, correct. But I will defend you guys when I say Domingo Germán. Yes, he just pitched great against the Mets, but he had options. You could have just demoted him and put that spot in for Frankie Montas.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand. That Domingo Germán, first of all, who's had issues off the field as well, going back to that theme as well. I just don't understand this. It's one of those issues where you're just like, all right, we got to figure it out. And don't throw anything at me as I'm sitting here with two other Yankee fans. I don't trust Garrett Cole.
I think Garrett Cole. I like Garrett Cole, and he is leading the league in strikeouts right now. So
I really don't care because he's blowing himself up in starts.
I'm just saying, there's not. Okay. I'm just saying, guys, for those problems, and yes, I think they are problems, and yes, you can say those problems means he's not playing up to his $300 million contract. But who else is out there that you're going to get? No,
I'm not. First of all, you have no choice because now you're past the deadline and there's no September call.
No, but that's my point. Is that Garrett Cole is still one of the best pitchers in baseball for his problems. So it's not like you can just magically, hey, ta-da! I just got Garrett Cole and Jacob DeGrom all of a sudden.
Oh, I know.
Actually, and don't get mad at me again. I don't think Garrett Cole is pitching like the best pitcher in baseball right now. I really don't. I think he's hurting the team right now.
Well,
I wouldn't go that far.
The thing you're just worried about, it's just the one inning with him because he can cruise along and then he struggles in one inning.
Johnny, and on to that note, actually both those notes combined. Look at one of his more recent outings. I think it was I forget it was Tampa Bay or Toronto. That basically he basically let up 4 runs because of his one inning-itis. But then that was against Toronto. But against Toronto and that kind of team they have, that's not bad. But then when you have a lineup that gives you just 1 run, you're not helping your case.
That's fair, and that's where I get worried about the October. Am I getting the offense from the first couple of months of the season, or am I getting the offense that I've had the last 10, 15, 20 games?
Yeah, but you can't have one inning-itis as an ace of the Yankees. You can't have it. You can't have it.
But you can't expect perfection every time, Nick.
No, but he's got to pitch better. He's not pitching well right now. You're telling me that he's pitching like the ace that he should be?
Nick, but that's not the big problem right now. Because I think the big problem when it comes to your pitching is your bullpen. Because Scott Ebros hurt, Clay Holmes hurt, Albert Abreu sucks and hurt.
I look at how many relievers are on the injured list right now. I think there's like 7 or 8 of them that right now are on the injured list, and that's not even counting Dak Britton, who's I know close to returning. He might actually end up being very, very important for them when he comes back. Yeah. I would say one thing here before we move on with the Yanks. There is one thing they do have on their side right now with all these struggles, and that's time. Because it's late August. If this was late September and they were crawling like they were into the postseason, it'd be a little different. I mean, I spoke about this with Hank on the show on Tuesday. It's almost like the 2000 Yankees, if you remember how much they struggled late in the season before they got into the playoffs, and then they exploded and won their 3rd straight championship. They could still do that. They could still find a way to fix all these woes. Their offense will not stay like this for the rest of the month.
Johnny.
And then you hope that their bullpen comes back and is healthy, and then you maybe could have almost a full staff going into October.
Johnny, you're correct, and I want to believe you because, like you said, the 2000 Yankees. But I think this is where the last series with the Mets and this upcoming West Coast trip with the A's and Angels are so important. If you can't fix your momentum against these weak-ass A's and Angels teams, then you got a problem. Then your division lead ain't safe. Then you can, if you struggle against the A's and Angels, you can forget about Houston and that home field advantage. If you reach the ALCS with them, you'll have to win in Houston, which has been the Yankees' kryptonite.
Yeah, it is. I almost don't think you can even think about the Astros at this point now because what they're doing is remarkable. But
by the way, you better win every freaking game on that road trip. You're the favored team in all those games. You better win every game. The Angels, like you said, the Angels are a bust. And what are the A's? The A's are nothing. If you don't sweep the A's, that's embarrassing. I don't care if it's on the road or at home.
And where Carpenter's absence also hurts, Johnny, is you see that comment recently from Judge talking about that the team needs a spark even in the locker room. Now, I could go right there and just yell at Judge because he is supposed to be the team leader. If he resigns, it's expected maybe he'll become the captain. And yes, maybe that is a bad look on him. But Rizzo's been around the majors a lot longer than Judge. Where's he to call the team meeting? Stanton, I know, has been in Somerset over the weekend in rehab, but like, where's he calling in to rally these troops? Somebody needs to, I know Booney isn't the most popular person, but when he did that table slam,
I give him credit. I give him credit because most managers would actually not call that out.
Right, but somebody needs to step up. You need a Derek Jeter-like personality, and I think in the most recent Paul O'Neill day, when all those ex-Yankees there, you needed somebody there to say, "Wake the fuck up! It's time." Yeah,
but I was going to say this before. I feel like we're making excuses for the starting rotation, and that's the issue we're having here. You're not getting enough innings out of the starting rotation, and that's why the bullpen is hurt or struggling, because they have to pitch a lot of innings. They relied on the bullpen in the first half, and now it's biting them in the second half.
But you also have to remember something, Nick. Early on in the first half of the season, bullpen was one of the best in baseball. Now they're no. The worst.
No, that's what I'm saying, though. Because they were used so much and they relied on a dominant bullpen, now it's hurting them because they were overpitched in the first half.
Yeah, we kind of saw that towards the end of the Joe Torre years. When you overuse guys so much, what would happen to them? I mean, I'm not going to bring up the names because I think we're all going to get violently sick on the air, so I don't want to do that. But,
well, I'll give you two names: Paul Quantrill and Tom Gordon.
Oh, see, those are the two guys. I was just going to say it, and I can see right now Quantrill giving up that home run to Ortiz.
I was going to go different. I was going to go Kyle Farnsworth.
Oh,
well,
man.
He was just a bust in New York in general.
Oh, God, I can see Paul Quantrill's home run to Ortiz again. Oh.
But my point is, there's a pattern. When the Yankees find a guy in the bullpen they like, they overuse them, and then they either get hurt or they bust out.
Well, the thing is also, these guys have never been in this kind of situation before. I mean, Ross hasn't pitched this much. Abreu really wasn't that much of a reliever even before the Yankees got rid of him the first time. And then, I mean, Miguel Castro, boy, I mean, some of these names, Chapman's just winding down the end of his career. And Clay Holmes, I know he was putting up Mariano Rivera type numbers in the first half of the season, but like maybe what Nick was saying, maybe his overuse to just come back to reality.
And that's the issue.
The thing that they got time, the thing that benefits them right now is the fact that they have the time on their side to correct all these things.
And again, Johnny, I want to say you're right, but if you go into this West Coast trip and you only split it, you don't win most of the games of the West Coast trip. I think time starts to slip and become your enemy.
Well, I mean, we'll find out. I mean, this is where it'd be nice if we actually had the rule of having the 40-man roster up in September.
I know.
That was another mistake baseball made.
Very quickly, guys, speaking of Yankee woes, fair or foul? You saw Hal Steinbrenner. Basically, Yankee front office had to give the gifts instead of the current team because Paul O'Neill's unvaccinated. So Major League rules prevent them from doing any interactions on the field. So it had to be Hal Steinbrenner, the Steinbrenner family, and Brian Cashman. Brian Cashman was there, but he was mentioned in the speech. And at the mention and at Hal's mention, boo.
It's foul. It's totally foul. It has not. The ceremony has nothing to do with what the 2022 Yankees are doing. So the fans are just upset because of the way that the team is playing.
Correct. And Johnny, I agree, foul. But here's the one problem. When do the fans get the chance? Yes, they get the chance on Twitter, but when do you get the chance to tell it to somebody's face? Hal is not like George. George was always in the spotlight. Hal is and it's gone that way ever since Hal and Hank took over the team at the end of the 2000s.
Well, that's because Hal hides behind the organization. That's why.
Yeah, the organization's run differently. This hasn't been anything new since they took over.
I'll tell you right now, if George is running this organization, every player would have been brought in at the trade deadline. That's what would have happened.
Volpe wouldn't be in the organization system anymore.
Oh, there's no question about that. None of these prospects. Heck, if George was still around, we don't even know if we would have ever seen Aaron Judge in the majors. Think about that for a second. So you know what? You kind of need to see your homegrown guys here for.
Correct, but I do think sometimes, and we talked about this in our little meeting, sometimes control and options, sometimes those words come back to bite the Yankees. Look at this Josh Donaldson trade.
I understand that. No, look, it's definitely can come back and bite you. That's for sure.
Like because they gave Gary Sanchez so many chances, we had to take on Josh Donaldson just to get rid of him.
But you know what, though? I kind of get that trade in some aspects because Gary Sanchez was never going to succeed in a Yankee uniform.
I think we should have done it sooner because, and this is where I understand the new philosophy of the protecting the homegrown guys, but this is where sometimes Cashman pisses me off because Cabrera, who has starting to, but when Cabrera came up, he was primarily known as a left side of the field kind of guy, even though he's actually a super utility guy, and we've seen him play right field as of late. Cabrera, but my point is Cabrera, third and short. Volpe, short. Peraza, short. You only have 9 positions, and only 2 of them are on the left side of the infield.
Austin Wells as well, multiple in the catcher position,
and Anthony Ziegler at catch. we gotta spread this out a little more.
And actually, it reminds me, when we interviewed Anthony Volpe and Austin Wells on this show, we spoke to them about coming up in the organization, and all they want is a chance to make it up to the majors. But how do you make it up to the majors if there's no spot? If
there's a logjam, right? So
that's the problem.
Which is why I made that remark to you guys on pre-show meetings, and I'll make it here. If you're not going to re-sign Judge, fine, but you're going to have to spend the money to get rid of Josh Donaldson somehow if you want these young guys coming up.
Well, let's get back to this. So, fair or foul on the Paul O'Neill ceremony? It's foul because they're booing. Foul. They're booing the team this year. They're not booing. Now, you've heard my strong opinions, Tom, on this, and I don't know if I told you. Mm-hmm. Paul O'Neill's an idiot. And I'm sorry. I get the damn vaccine. Stop playing around with this nonsense.
He likes Studio 21. What can I tell you?
Yeah, I was going to say he likes
it's ruining the broadcast.
I will say it is ruining the radio side when they can't go to games and John Sterling is watching on a little TV.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you what else is... Well, I don't want to go off.
No. I'll get it up.
Yeah, because you know what? Tuesday night, I wanted to watch that Yankee Mets Subway Series game. If I wanted to watch the Yankee broadcast, guess what? It's not on TV.
Well, that's just MLB being stingy for you, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's going to get worse too because you know my whole thought about that. But yeah, that's also on Manfred too.
All right, quickly, we did a whole stream on this, a whole 1 hour, 45-minute, 1 hour stream. So if you want our full thoughts, go watch that. But Deshaun Watson suspended 11 games, fined $5 million. On one hand, guys, I'm so glad that this is over. On the other hand, the more I think about it, man, he only got 11 games. And you see how pissy some of these Cleveland fans are. Did you guys see that photo of the dad and his son basically free Watson? And there was like a derogatory term against women or something.
Delusional. This is delusional. Now, first of all, you should have been suspended for at least a year. I think that we all think that he should have been suspended at least for the year. But you know what? You know what's even worse than that father and the fan? His own teammates trying to defend him to get back on the field.
It even goes beyond that. I mean, if you watch the press conference with Watson, he apologizes, but he still claims his innocence. And how about the owners, the co-owners, the Haslams, basically coming out during the press conferences and they say, "Oh, but Deshaun's a hell of a quarterback." You know what, guys? I don't want to be hearing that after this suspension gets announced, after they agree to the 11-game suspension. And another thing, too, and we had said it during our broadcast, 11 games, coincidence? I think not. I mean, 11,
the fact that he's coming
games. I mean, what kind of number is 11? Where's the half game? Where's the half season? Where's the full season? Where's the 6 or the 10?
Johnny,
pick 11. Such a coincidental number.
Because such a coincidence that his first game back is against the Texans.
I mean, this is just going to be the year of the revenge of the quarterback. I mean, isn't this going to be the year of the revenge of the quarterback? You have 2 week 1 games where you have quarterbacks facing their old team, and now you have Watson's first game in almost 2 years going to be against his former team.
No one cares. Well, yeah, that's good too.
There you go.
But my point is, first of all, no one gives a crap about Baker. So no one cares. That's actually good, by the way. It actually makes sense.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
I think I put that in the game on folder, if I'm not mistaken. Or did you make that just now?
I made that.
We can make this a whole whole network thing.
But
Roger Goodell strikes again.
But you know what? Deshaun should have been on the indefinite suspension list until he can get his attitude in place. He still thinks he deserves nothing.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. He's claiming his innocence still after the on Thursday.
And Sue L. Robinson, by the way, when she made that 6-game suspension, so basically she was playing off of what the personal conduct policy had said and what the NFL used to do. So, but the NFL was constantly arguing, oh, no, this is a different, because this is a different process. There's no precedent for this. You are setting the precedent. But if you look at the PCP, it says at least a 6-game suspension. So you have to, as the NFL and Roger Goodell, you have to change that.
It was a choice. We talked about this. Sue Robinson was a choice. It wasn't mandatory.
She was a shield. She was a shield for the shield.
How ironic.
I just wonder now, a week after this has been announced, if the Calvin Ridley suspension was not a year for what he did, right? Let's say the Ridley suspension was 8 games, a half a season, and Watson got 11. Would we be sitting here maybe with a little bit of a different thought? Because I think part of this is the reason why we're sitting here and we're saying that the 11-game suspension is not long enough.
I wouldn't.
Well, but like we've been talking about, this is a less suspension than what Calvin Ridley did. Do you think what he did here was less warranted than what Ridley did? Or the other suspensions, like DeAndre Hopkins only gets 6 for PED use.
Deshaun Watson committed possibly some domestic, well, I won't say domestic, but like issues where he was involved with women. Okay, 66 of them allegedly. You're telling me that that's less than Calvin Ridley, who got caught gambling when it's allowed by the sport?
I think what Johnny was saying is if Calvin Ridley had been half a season and Deshaun got 11 games, secondly, it's more. There's not as much outrage.
I disagree. I think Deshaun Watson should have been indefinite from the start.
That's fair.
That's fair.
Yep.
All right. So, guys, let's talk about this funny Tom Brady theory. So, Tom Brady had taken an agreed upon leave of absence for what we call personal reasons. Now, we heard some things. Brady just came back. Apparently, he was on vacation and spending time with his family. We actually did hear as part of the rumors that maybe he and Giselle were not exactly getting along, that maybe Giselle might have been a little pissed at him for the 40-day retirement. But then their Reddit user came out with this theory of, hey, Brady's dates that he asked for off align somewhat with the Masked Singer schedule, taping schedule. I wonder, maybe he's going to be on the Masked Singer. Also adding the points that Joe Buck, Antonio Brown, and I think somebody else basically were on the Masked Singer. I think Gronk was on the Masked Singer, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. Now I'll say it again, like I said in the promo. Company man.
I mean, if it turns out that he actually was on the Masked Singer, if we see in however
Did you see the tweet? Did you see the tweet of the video of him on the motorcycle with the he's like, oh, I was wearing a mask and gloves. You jerk off. Who are you trying to fool?
Hey, we've seen, sports athletes go on be a part of reality shows, be a part of game shows in season. Or
I'll give you one better, and Tom said it in the minute. I'm going to steal it here. That would be as big as Rudy Giuliani being on The Masked Singer.
Better than Rudy Giuliani.
Well, anything's better than Rudy Giuliani at this point.
Mm-hmm.
No bias there.
Well, that's not the only way Tom Brady and Gronk got into the headlines. So, UFC 278 took place this past weekend. I'll mention a result from it later. Oh, by the way, go listen to the MMA Outsiders. If you can listen to it every Wednesday here in the Adventure Network at 9 a.m. Eastern. Plug. Okay, plug finished. But Dana, we had a little Gronk cast. It's the latest venture from Omaha Productions. The latest of alternate commentary. The Gronks, not just Rob Gronkowski, all the Gronkowski family.
And his father.
Yes, all the family.
It's a family affair.
So, as their first guest, Dana White made an appearance during the prelims before the pay-per-view card, and we actually have a football story that comes out of it somehow, because Dana White has told a story that is implying that, if you guys remember, Brady had told, I think it was HBO, the story about his free agency and how a team was interested in him, then turned their back, and Brady went, "Really? You're sticking with that guy?" So the original assumption was maybe it had been the Dolphins because this whole Stephen Ross situation. Now it turns out it might have been the Raiders. So here's the full footage from ESPN. It's about 2 minutes long. It's Dana telling the story.
Another question for you, man. I know when Tom was a free agent about like 2-3 years ago before he went to Tampa, you gave him a recruiting pitch on why he should join the Vegas Raiders. What went wrong with that recruiting pitch that you gave him?
Do I really tell this story right now, Gronk? Do you want me to tell this story?
Yes.
You can give a brief story. You don't got to go too much in details because you never know. I could have been in Vegas with you for the last 3 years, man. What the heck?
No,
it's still there. You would have signed it.
You would have been. So
I would have been.
I'm the one. I worked to put that deal together for Brady and Gronk to come to the Raiders, and it was almost a done deal. And at the last minute, Gruden blew the deal up and said that he didn't want him. And all hell broke loose, man. It was crazy. And
so, guys, I originally wanted to say, okay, maybe Dana's saying he's putting the deal together. Maybe it's just a whole bunch of BS talk. But the fact that Gronk, basically was encouraging him to tell the story. And then Davis later, when asked about it, was like, "Oh, I have no idea. I have no idea about this." I'm sorry. Sounding like Dana might have been telling the truth here.
Oh, I have one response.
Why the fuck you lying?
You really think Dana's lying?
No, I'm saying, why is Dana not wanting to tell the story?
Well, Dana did end up telling it because of Gronk's encouragement. But if this story is true, I'm sorry. Jon Gruden should have been fired even before those emails came out. You're telling me you don't want the most prestigious quarterback currently today in the NFL and his buddy who when he's playing was one of the better tight ends in the NFL. Now I know you have Darren Waller, but the fact that you were choosing Carr over Brady, I'm sorry. Like, really? And especially considering that the Raiders were, I know they finished 9-8 last season, but the Raiders were a below 500 team when Gruden came back. Like, really?
Yeah, something doesn't seem right in all of this.
Something seems fishy, like in a lot of ways with this whole thing where it's just like, all right, why the Raiders? I mean, first we heard the story about the Dolphins, and then there was a whole tampering situation, and there was a whole rumor that he was going to be part of ownership with the Dolphins, which is that even legal to be part of ownership and being on the field? I don't even know.
I don't know. Go ask Michael Jordan, Nick.
That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. You're right. But I don't know. I mean, it's a good story for ESPN Plus because unfortunately it's not allowed on television. So that means mostly a lot of people didn't see it.
Well, no. It was on the prelims, so it was on ESPN.
Oh, this was on ESPN?
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, I'd say before it went to the pay-per-view, but Dana was basically the first guest, so he got the pre-pay-per-view spot.
Yeah, that was the Keep It Up with the Gronks thing they did at 9 p.m. Eastern on Saturday, right?
They started it at 9 and during the last hour of prelims, and then they went into the pay-per-view.
Okay.
I need to say one thing. As much as I love Peyton and as much as I love Omaha Productions, it's too much. Too many simulcasts.
They're trying to do spin-offs of it, and the original product is the best thing.
Right. It doesn't work. Peyton and Eli's worked.
I mean, do you realize what they've actually spun off of trying to do with that? They've tried to do the K-Rod cast, which is not working. They tried to do a golf cast. That didn't work.
Well, I have one that I think is going to work, and it's another one that's getting ready to start. I think McAfee is going to be a home run. I really do.
Yes, I think McAfee, because of the name and how he is, I think absolutely.
They just got to be very careful and have the dump button and the sensor ready for TV.
That is true.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely.
And I hope. Sorry, guys. I hope McAfee's his schedule isn't going to be too harsh on him because he's got to do
WWE
SmackDown the night before.
Well, so here's what. First of all, McAfee's got a huge audience. Huge.
Oh, without a doubt.
His show is on Sirius. It's the weird deal with his thing is it's technically a YouTube show, which they signed to Sirius XM, and it's a whole thing. And he's got to deal with FanDuel. Like, it's huge. The show is huge. Yeah. So I think that's going to be a hit. And by the way, he used to work for ESPN. Most people don't remember that.
I do.
Yep. Oh, yeah, that's right.
So I think this is ESPN basically saying, oops, we screwed up, but we're not actually signing you. We're letting Omaha Productions do it.
One question I would ask you about all this: if this is really true, why would you go off on why would you say it here and not go on a bigger, on a bigger show to explain it? Number two, this stuff wouldn't. I mean, you kind of know that what I would, but also wouldn't this have gotten leaked out this day and age in society where leaks happen all the time?
Because trying to bring attention onto the show.
I was going to say a lot of these simulcasts. Ones with Peyton and Eli, eventually with McAfee, the K-Rod cast, which has gotten better from the story standpoint, but from the content standpoint, it's a zero, in my opinion.
It's a zero.
But they're looking to build storylines and headlines on these simulcasts because they want people to tune in to watch them. Unfortunately, 95%, in my opinion, are watching the Gamecast. And the other 5% who don't want to listen to, like, say, Buck and Aikman during Monday Night Football, eventually when football starts, they're going to go listen to Peyton and Eli. And I might go listen to Peyton and Eli more than Buck and Aikman because at least I'll be entertained by what's on the screen.
And depending on the matchup, too, on Monday night. Because, Monday nights usually are not the best matchups.
But the reason I was always tuning with Peyton and Eli, well, one, I just like the Mannings, and two, because it was different. Now everything else, now it feels all of the same and not done as well. I mean, K-Rod, it's Michael K and A-Rod. What is it that,
What's their unique point of sale?
Right. Like Michael K, we watch, maybe it's different for the rest of the country, but we watch Michael K every day here in New York. A-Rod,
almost every day, yeah.
A-Rod we always see on the weekends when it comes to his gig at Fox Sports. So it doesn't impact us because it just feels like another broadcast to us.
And you know what? And I'm speaking directly to the TV networks right now when I say this. Stop giving A-Rod a job. Stop. He's not good at it. He's really not good at it. Unless he wants to teach people how to use steroids for a living.
Oh, we're tricking the A-Rod haterade today.
I think I've had more hatred on baseball today than I had on the NBA. I was actually calm on LeBron earlier.
You were calm on LeBron, yeah. I was going to say LeBron was the least of the problems today.
This episode's brought to you by Haterade.
Yeah, now we just need to have a round table of A-Rod, LeBron, and Manfred, and anybody else. And
Nick has to be the center.
I mean, we don't even have time for this story, and I totally forgot to mention it. But we didn't even get to the Brittany Griner story, which all that stuff coming out too.
Oh yeah, Brittany Griner. I'll just say, we can mention it right now, and I'm just gonna say, why are we going with Rodman again? What?
I'll tell you what it is. Dennis Rodman just has a death wish, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I was going to say, didn't he do this with Korea too?
Yes, he was an ambassador for the U.S., but I don't know if you guys saw the story, and I did it on the minute, that the U.S. is basically not endorsing him going to Russia. They said it's basically on his own volition.
Yeah, I mean... I think there's a reason why, but I don't think it's warranted to explain on this show.
Well, it's politics. It's politics, unfortunately. Yeah, but the one thing, and I'll end on this, and Nick Federa was planting his flag on this part of that story. Well, the money. First of all, I still don't agree. And I said in the minute that these female athletes are not paid enough money. I'm not talking about her. I'm talking about in general. She makes $220,000. So one, she made this mistake on her own volition. But the rest of the WNBA is not paid enough, and that's why these athletes are going across borders to play.
Well, I was going to say this is coming. Just going to say this is coming from the same league that fined the owner of the New York Liberty a whole bunch. Was it a whole bunch of money, or was it a draft pick?
No, it was like a couple $1 million.
$2 million, trying to make her players comfortable by providing them with a nice flight better than what they were probably getting.
Tom, you're talking about Joe Tsai, the Brooklyn Nets owner who owns the Liberty.
Yes.
So, and by the way, I would so love to talk to like Kathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA. I have so many questions, and that interview would probably never be able to air because I would be rough, like on some of the questions I would ask. I would be.
All right. Other little tidbits for this week to wrap it up. Leon Edwards, I talked about it earlier this morning on MMA Outsiders, but man, pulling off one of the biggest comebacks in mixed martial arts history. So guys,
that kick to the face was insane.
And Leon Edwards, we had some hints that maybe he had Usman's number a little bit in the opening round when he took him down because nobody had taken Usman down at all in the UFC in like 6-7 years. But Usman was pretty much taking over that fight, was in control. Edwards looked absolutely tired. Joe Rogan and Daniel Cormier were just pounding on him on commentary, saying he was quitting. And John Anik, the main play-by-play, was saying, that's not the cloth from which he comes from. Right after he says that the head kick is delivered.
No, my favorite part was the Rogan reaction.
Yeah, I mean, this week, if you think about it, this week's been the week of the memes and the viral reactions. Rogan, Aaron Boone.
It was a good week.
Yeah, it's a good week for that. Yeah, that was definitely. Look, I'm not an UFC expert, but I see the highlights the next morning because I got to be. Yours truly's got to be up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, so I missed that. But on Saturday nights, but yeah, no, that was definitely something when I saw the highlights Sunday morning.
Guys, by the way, if you were doing a live bet, I think this was DraftKings. If you were doing a live bet start of round 5, Usman was at minus 10,000. Wow. If somebody put a live bet on Leon Edwards at the start of round 5, they would be retired today. Let's put it that way.
Damn, it's too bad I didn't recognize it until.
Nick Saban, speaking of ka-ching, new contract. He's the highest earning coach in college football again. And he's going to be signed to this deal. By the time it ends in 2030, he's going to be 77.
Why?
You know what it is? So this is pretty much like a lifetime contract for Nick Saban. Look what he's done with Alabama. You know, they're constantly in the college football playoff every year. This year, they're probably going right back to it again. They're always at least in the semifinal of the championship. Look, it's for what he's done for the university and stuff. And you know what? I'd say he deserves every last dollar and every last year that he gets with Alabama. I don't have a problem with it. And for the people that say, "Oh, this is why college athletes should be getting paid," that's nonsense. Saban's done his time as a college player, and you know what? He's a coach now, and you know he deserves every last dollar.
I agree with you. First of all, I think college coaches make an obscene amount of money now, but that's not my argument. With the players, I'm totally on board with you. The Nick Federa's argument about college athletes that they should be making what the coaches make, that's bullshit. Okay? There's no argument for that. The players are there for the education. That's what they're there for.
Well, that's what they should be there for. Not everybody follows that.
You're right.
Especially now.
But at the same time...
But I think there is a little levity when you see these players getting all these NILs.
I'm still not a fan of the NILs, to be honest with you, at all.
Did you guys see what's his name? DeFrost. He was in Nebraska.
Scott Frost.
What?
Scott Frost?
No. DeFrost. What's his name?
What, a college player in Nebraska? I saw a story on it. I'm trying to see if I can find it.
No, not DeFrost. The coldest Crawford. He had an NIL with basically an air conditioning company because his name is the coldest. So they want to make people's houses the coldest.
I'll give you. Okay, yeah, and I'll give you one better. Hooters gave out to like 52 athletes, I think it was.
Yes, Johnny and I spoke about that the other day. I'm like, really, Hooters?
Well,
By the way, can you hear that knocking? Can you hear that knocking on my door? That's Federa outside saying, "Let me in on this conversation."
Well, wait,
going off on that.
Didn't Hooters sign one of the St. Peter's kids when the St. Peter's had
yes,
this year?
Yeah.
Yes. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry.
It's being taken to a whole new level, and you knew that was going to happen. I mean, you're seeing there's two things in college sports that have changed the college landscape forever now. That's NIL and the transfer portal. And you're going to start seeing a lot more of these athletes going into the transfer portal because of NIL. It's going to be hand in hand. And it's just crazy. I mean, one of the guys that entered that transfer portal down here locally was quarterback Spencer Rattler, who's going to be starting at QB for the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Insane. And I can't remember. Oh, Lane Kiffin. I just looked it up. Lane Kiffin had strong opinions against the NIL. And you know what? I agree with him. There needs to be regulation. There is no regulation. Basically, companies are going out and paying some of these guys millions.
I knew NIL, this was inevitable that this was going to happen, but I remember that the day that this was announced and stuff, I could tell you right away that this was not going to be regulated or handled properly. It was going to be nuts.
I will give Federa one defense. You guys don't think maybe NCAA kind of did this to itself a little bit?
No, I don't agree with that.
I don't know how could you say that?
How could you say that? There had to be a ruling against it to be legalized.
Okay, maybe not so much the NCAA, but, you know, certain coaches maybe trying to prioritize athletics more than academics.
And that's the problem. And that's
the problem, yeah.
And like you said earlier, how your argument was made stronger. That's actually an argument for us making it stronger, that because athletics are being treated worse, they're taking advantage and now regulating NILs to make it further away from education.
One thing I will say, though, if you watch some of like the CBS broadcasts or NBC or whatnot during the college football or basketball games, they do show the players and what their major and what their GPA is, and then you realize that, you know what, that these guys are actually still students first and athletes second. That's how it should always be.
Well, but unfortunately, though, even though they're showing that, it doesn't mean anything.
I was going to say, I agree with you guys. That's what it should be, but is that the reality?
Hell no.
It's getting worse and worse, it seems like, every year.
It's all about the money. That's it. These guys don't care about education, and that's the problem. And what's ironic about this whole situation, what's the lowest average professional sports career?
Football.
Ding! Right. 2 to 3 years in the NFL is the average.
Well, what are you saying? They don't care. Who? Players?
Players.
I would stretch that to some institutions, though. I think some institutions care more about their athletics than academics.
Yeah, but that's their job as being the coach and the people who run.
I'm not saying the coach. No. I'm not saying the coach. I'm saying the heads of these institutions.
Well, I would consider that as part of management. Whoever's the coach and then whoever is in charge of the.
And I'm saying, go beyond athletics, Nick. Go beyond. I'm talking like the presidents.
Are you talking about the university president?
Actually, and I would include them as well. All they care about is the money. That's it. Look at the big deal, and I'm sure Johnny, you saw this too.
But Nick, but then they're hurting. But then they can't come out and say, these university presidents can't come out and say, "Oh, we care so much about academics," because clearly you don't.
No, I'm agreeing with you. They don't care about education. And that's the problem. Look at the big deal. What was it, the Big Ten, or was it the SEC that just signed a $7 billion deal?
Big Ten, yep.
And that's the problem. That's why the NILs are not regulated, and that's why all the players are fighting for the money, because the TV contract for the SEC or the Big Ten is $7 billion.
Nick, let me tell you, college football is going to overtake one of the major sports in the next couple of years, because with the money situation and the fact that you got all these conferences that are starting to get realigned, I think you're going to start seeing college football become one of the top major sports.
I think it already overtakes hockey, and I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to overtake baseball.
I think baseball for sure. I mean, the way you look at it now, in the Northeast, it's a little bit different because I don't think the Northeast is that big in the college football. I know that. And over here, for 25 years.
Correct.
That's actually how I became a Notre Dame fan, was because they were the only school that was actually on every week on national TV. So
and over here, baseball is big in the Northeast.
Yes.
Well, I was going to say that's ironic. You brought up the Fighting Irish, because they are technically a rarity being by themselves when it comes to
independent.
Now, what are they? They're at like 70 million a year right now. They make from NBC. Can you imagine if they got back into one of the realignments? That deal would be crazy.
Oh yeah, no, I mean they've been talking about going to the. They've been talking about possibly going to the Big Ten when their contract runs out in 2025. I've said this. I don't know if it's going to happen by 25. I don't know what's going to happen later on. It's going to be inevitable that they're going to be joining a conference at some point.
I mean, look what happened to USC. And look at all those colleges.
UCLA, yeah.
And UCLA. They now have to travel to the East Coast to play games.
And you may see Oregon go to the Big Ten. I mean, that's just the conference is the Power 5 conference in college football is going to become a Power 3 in a couple of years.
And that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, but that's how crazy the money situation is right now, not only NILs, but TV contracts in general. It's crazy.
I'd say, and we're talking about the Power 3, Power 5s, all these NILs. Like the only thing about the NIL is that's kind of needed because these poor mid majors. You know, I'm from a couple of schools that had mid majors, and it's like sometimes those mid majors, in these examples, they get screwed over.
Yeah.
There's no way. They got to figure out how to regulate. Until they figure out how to regulate the NIL, this is going to be a massive mess for a long time. And there's going to be a constant argument over coaches and players.
I wasn't just saying that on the NIL side. I was also saying that on the TV side and on
the
Power 3 side. Like really, all this attention is going to go to the Power 3, and then those conferences are going to win those championship year after year. It's like, come on. Give attention to your mid majors. Sometimes mid majors are better than watching some of these Power 3
look at Cincinnati last year. They got into
right.
They were not a Power 5
St. Peter's
and St. Peter's in basketball now. It's a little different in basketball because you have many more teams that make the tournament, and you don't have undefeated teams. Not every game in college basketball means something like it does in football.
I just want to say one thing, and it's going to piss off a lot of people I know, including college football fans or college sports fans in general. These deals that these universities and these divisions make with the TV contracts, guess what? How much are you privy to of that contract? Zero. Zero. The schools make the contracts, not the players. Okay? Go out there, play to the best of your ability, go get your millions of dollars in the NFL. If you're good enough to go to the NFL, you have nothing to do with TV contracts. Zero. And I'm sorry, like when Nick says that they should get a piece of the TV contract, no, you don't. You're there for your education, or your payment is your scholarship to the school.
Well, that's a whole other thing when you've got, people who in the academic side who actually do, work hard on that end and getting chump change compared to what some of these guys get.
And to me, it's actually kind of a conflict of interest now with the NILs. Because now you have to do certain things that technically could be breaking the rules of eligibility, because now you're doing sponsorship-related things, which was never allowed in the first place. Do you remember all the academic violations that used to happen because some of these guys were sneaking and taking money from agents behind the team's back? Mm-hmm. There's no regulation, so now anyone can take money from an agent, money from a cryptocurrency.
Like Reggie Bush, right?
Yeah, well, that, and also, why am I forgetting his name now? The Jaguars quarterback now.
Trevor Lawrence,
who basically got $300,000 in Bitcoin as part of a deal from when he signed in the NFL.
Well, Bitcoin's, I'm sorry. Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, you're basically getting paid chump change anyway.
Well, and then, what was it? Odell Beckham Jr., whose contract was basically in Bitcoin. He took it as Bitcoin. And guess what? The $750,000 was cut in half because of Bitcoin dropping.
Yeah.
So there's no way to regulate this. They need a CEO or a COO, someone that runs the NILs for college sports.
All right, one last story. Speaking of TV and college, Urban Meyer's back. Who freaking cares?
It's crazy because I think a lot of people tune in to the first game to the first week this upcoming Saturday, the 27th. I think people will tune into the broadcast just to see how he's going to be if he fits right in. I will say though, the weird thing that's going to be first time he gets asked from maybe a colleague about, if this coach is struggling or is having a tough time, Urban, you've had that experience before. Tell us, what is it like?
I was going to say, I think Urban's kind of I know he's a legendary coach, but I think he's kind of hurt his reputation in recent years, from Ohio State scandals to his disastrous run this past year with Miami.
The broadcast, the broadcast though, he was all right as an analyst, so I think if he goes back there, he'll fit right in a couple of weeks, he'll be okay.
By the way, Johnny, ironically, this was a Friday night news dump.
Yes, it was. This happened on Friday night.
Yeah. They tried to hide this in the worst way possible when they hired him. They're like, all right, we'll just drop it on Friday night. Maybe no one will notice.
And that's in the same breath that when Fox Sports put out their entire college football teams together, and then they, of course, the big noon kickoff, which they have before their games every Saturday. But hey, you know what? College football is back. Week 0 this upcoming Saturday, and then their games start for real on the following week.
This is the fun part of the year when NFL comes back, college football comes back. We're getting into the MLB playoffs, if anyone cares. The NBA's heading back towards the season starting again in October. This is the busy time of the year.
And I think it starts for us next week, really, if you think about it. Right, Tom?
Yeah. So as I start to close things out, I will put it up again to start Ante the Bench Network's season preview of the 2022 NFL season. We'll do a special. It'll be Thursday, September 1st, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, broadcasted here on the Empty the Bench Network. Obviously, next week we got our normal game on and Empty the Bench, so you've got a lot of coverage, and then some special NFL coverage on September 1st, as the preseason is about to wrap up this season as well.
By the way, this has to be a record for the longest show.
Yeah, this is our first time breaking 2 hours.
But as we said, we have NFL, and over the next couple of weeks, I'm sure we're going to be breaking it down individually for NFL, and hopefully we can suffer through our Giants and Jets.
If you're any Giant fans around, make sure to tune into my show Game On Tuesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern. We're working on getting a Giants guest on to talk about the Giants, who had a very interesting couple of days, including a significant scare with their rookie defensive end Kayvon Thibodeau. Fortunately, just a MCL sprain, but we'll be talking about that and a lot more on my show Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern here, along with my buddy Hank and Victor.
Oh, did we make it through everything?
Yes. All right. Make sure to hit that like button. Make sure to subscribe. And when you subscribe, make sure to ring the bell. Get all your notifications. Make sure to follow us across social media at ETB Sports on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and at ETB Network. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And make sure you follow us on social media. You see our little social media accounts scrolling across the bottom below. And
follow Game On as well. At Game On ETB.
Game On ETB, yep.
So, yeah, I think we made it through. This is the longest episode. Nick wasn't even here.
Yeah, it's a miracle. Well, you know what? The way we were going, it was going to happen eventually.
The last 2 episodes have been long.
Last 3.
Oh, is it the last 3?
Last 3.
Let's just be honest. How about the entire summer was like this?
Yeah.
Summer's supposed to be a quiet period, and it's been anything but this year, right?
Well, I'll tell a quick story quickly, that we were all looking for our shows to take a week off. Well, that never happened. So we have to, thanks a lot to Sean. Thanks a lot, Kevin Durant. Thanks.
Rob Manfred.
Oh, I think this would be appropriate to end the show with this.
Well, actually, put that down for a second, because we have to promote something else as well, if I can find it. Also, make sure you follow our YouTube page, youtube.com/ETB Network as well. Go click, like Tom said, subscribe, but here's the link if you're looking for it as well. Now you can end with that.
Okay, so for Johnny Montalbano, for Nick Morganson, I am Tom Albano, and we will see you next week for the 150th edition of Empty the Bench, our 3-year anniversary.
Holy crap! Whoa! Woo! I'm ready.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. See you next week.